All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. And in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit less about how to use a ServiceNow product, but more into how the ServiceNow product gets made and really fine-tuned for our customers. And joining us today is Jessie Livingston and Tricia Wilson and Molly Bowman, and they're all from the UI, UX, and research team, and they're going to really explain how this works. And to start us off, Jessie, I want you to introduce yourself and your role here and just talk to us about some of the case studies we're going to talk about and really just this idea of finding the voice of the customer and putting it into the ServiceNow world.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bobby. Yeah, I'm Jessie Livingston. I am the communication manager for the UX Research and Insights team. Molly and Tricia are also researchers on the team. And we're here to do something that's actually really unusual for UX research teams, and that we're going to share things that we've learned from customers in research and how that made a difference in the product. One of the big things that happened when I got hired is we started realizing that we don't close the loop with customers in research. We kind of they come in, we extract research insights from them, and then they move on. And that's normal for the UX research world. I'm a UX researcher myself. And so we realized we want to create a different kind of relationship with customers. We want them to know, what did we learn from you? And most importantly, what difference did it make? And so, yeah, we're going to talk about two really important features, process mining and voice for Now Assist, that were really big in the Yokohama release. And Tricia and Molly are both going to share ways that insights that they gathered impacted both of those features.
Oh, that's exciting because this is, like you said, I don't want to skip over that before we talk to Tricia, I think everybody has done some sort of research study where it's, hey, come in, we'll pay you $50 to play with this phone and figure it out. Or, hey, we really need you to figure out if this is even going to work. And then what you said, that we're actually now telling them how big of a pivot or a shift is that for ServiceNow?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, because it seems like, at ServiceNow, the relationship our customers have with our products is a long-term investment. When it's not like Netflix, where you can just turn on your subscription for a few months and turn it off. Like, this is a decade-long or more investment. You're building your entire technology infrastructure on our products. So that means we need to have a different kind of relationship with our customers. And that means not just the buyers and decision makers, but the end users, which is actually what's really unique. I'll just take a second to highlight what's unique about UX research is we primarily talk to end users, the people that are using our ServiceNow products day in and day out. Both are important, but end users are those that are kind of the ones that have the most tactical, hands-on experience with our products. And so we're getting straight from them what's working for you, what's not, and that's super crucial for our products today.
Well, that's going to be exciting because we're going to talk with Tricia next, and she's going to talk about process mining. And then again, joining us later is going to be Molly Bowman, and she's going to talk about that Now Assist voice addition in Yokohama. So everybody, hang tight and listen up, because joining us from the research team is Tricia Wilson, and she's going to walk us through her use case, which talks a lot about process mining, which I think a lot of us think we know what it is. But Tricia, tell us your role and then really break down what process mining is so we have a better understanding of it.
Sure thing. Thanks, Bobby. So as you said, I work in UX research, and I get to work on the products that help our customers better understand how their business is working. So that includes things like process mining, task mining, platform analytics, all the things you need to actually assess, is your business running the way you want it to? Are people getting work done in the way you expect them to? And that's really where process mining comes in. It's one of the things people really confuse. They often think process mining is like any other dashboard. You're going to see how many open tickets you have, and are you hitting your SLAs? That's not what process mining is at all. Process mining is about telling you why you might have overdue tickets, why you might not be seeing the work get done in one geography at the same speed as another. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we plan for something to work a certain way, and then there's reality. So if you've ever been to a park anywhere in the world, you see these beautiful paths, stone, gravel, whatever it might be. And then you see that dirt trail that's been carved through the grass because nobody's actually going to use the path as designed. Process mining is exactly about understanding why do these dirt trails exist in your processes all across your business. So that's what we do. And the way it works is we look at your event log data. So think of that a bit like your flight data recorder, where you capture not just when did the plane take off and when did it land, but you capture every altitude along the way, when did it turn, what did the pilots say to each other. All of that data that goes into an event log when it comes to your processes. And that's what we look at, which is what makes it so powerful and so different from your traditional analytics.
Okay, so this is that idea of I think you had mentioned it before when you were trying to explain it to me. I was still figuring out the intention versus the real,
Yeah,
correct?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And you'll find in most processes, your designed path is the exception, not the norm. You'll find that you can have hundreds, sometimes even thousands of different ways that people do the work differently from how you thought the work was supposed to be done or was designed to be done.
That makes sense because I think all of us have done like I'm going to teach you how to do it, but that's not how they do it. That's how I do it. And everybody you meet in the company says the exact same thing.
Right.
Um, well, let's get into the use case and talk about some of your findings and what you and the research team found out. And then I want you to talk to us about any surprises you might have found along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jesse mentioned it. One of the best parts about my job is we talk to the people actually using the product, right? So you have somebody that decided to buy it, cool, but they're rarely the person that sits down and uses it. So what we noticed is we had people excited to buy it, but maybe they weren't using it or they weren't using it the way we thought they would. And we wanted to understand why. So we went out, we spoke to our users. And there was a number of things we learned, but there was three really significant themes that came out from everyone we spoke to. And the first was it failed a lot, especially when you'd create a brand new mining job. So imagine you're trying to figure out why is my invoice processing so slow in my Western geography? And you go in, you set up the project, and it runs for many hours, sometimes 20 plus hours. You come in the next day, and it didn't work. So that was clearly not the intent. But that was happening over and over and over again, even to people that had experience with the tool. The next thing we learned was that when these failures happened, the error messages we give them were not helpful. I remember talking to one particular user, and you could feel the exasperation in his voice when he goes, "Do you know what it says whenever it fails? It says, 'Your job has failed.' That doesn't help me." And it's literally those kinds of very simple messages that don't give them any direction whatsoever. And so what do they have? They either retry blindly or they have to put in a case with ServiceNow. But both of those things are just adding time and not guaranteeing it's going to work. And then the third thing we discovered was after they've worked through those two pain points, they've dealt with the fact that it failed on the first try, they've dealt with an error message they couldn't understand, they finally get results and they didn't understand them. They weren't very meaningful. They couldn't figure out, is this something I should do something about? Why does this even matter? And so their constant experience was just disappointment. It wasn't, here, I have this thing I can now do to make my business run better. It was literally, well, that was a waste of my time, which is the exact opposite of what process mining is intended to do.
So some of these sound very familiar in just about every piece of software that anybody's ever used. But I know with ServiceNow, there's been big push to fix this, and not just the AI, but the human element layered with AI and layered with more human oversight. What were the things that you found to help alleviate these?
Yeah, look, great question. And I think that that's where user research is so powerful because we can connect that experience of the user with the people that build your product, right? And we can immediately start seeing an improvement. And so, where we had that first issue of failing when you set up your new jobs, we literally linked up those customers, those users, with our product and our engineering folk. And the first thing we identified was there was a defect, there was a bug that we hadn't identified before that meant if you had certain options selected, it would fail. We just had no idea. It was a combination we would have never known without the support of our customers actually being willing to sit through research and sit through the follow-up to actually explore more deeply. Fixing that, game changer, of course, because now things weren't failing. It still would take some time though. And that second piece of it might take 20 hours to get to the next outcome was also something we realized we needed to do something about. And we deployed RaptorDB for that. I think you had somebody on RaptorDB recently on your podcast. I think Will Johnson was on your show.
Yeah,
That
yeah, and
that's
he
the
explained
product.
how that's the Ferrari.
Yeah, that's the Ferrari,
That's the
right?
thing.
And process mining is a perfect use case for that exact Ferrari. Not only did it mean that the performance improved for the data people were already planning on mining, it meant they could grab much larger data sets to mine. So imagine it used to be you might be able to look at, say, 3 months worth of data or 6 months worth of data. Yeah, it's a good signal. But now imagine if you can look at a year or 2 years because the performance improves so much with RaptorDB that you could now pump a bunch more data through and learn more about how your business is running.
You said 3 to 6 months is a great way to plan and think, but a year, now you're talking about real budget. You're talking about real problem solving. You're talking about now I can onboard people. I can grow my business actually exponentially now.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, so many things in business can also be seasonal. So if you can only look at 3 months at a time, you can't plan for what is the difference between, high season, say, for example, Christmas time or, Easter time and low season. So that kind of ability to grow your data set and actually be able to see, gosh, look at how these things change when I'm having high volume throughput versus when I don't. Better for planning your resources, but also better for designing your process to account for that and make sure that you have the right SLAs, the right KPIs or key performance indicators to make sure you're staying on top of those needs that happen when you have peaks and troughs in your business.
But I want to switch to the error messages because this is one that I think is the bane of everybody who works in anything related to computers, but also this idea of language, how you say something makes or breaks a relationship. How did that pivot? How did that come about? How did those changes come in?
Yeah, and look, I think you're spot on. And it's one of the things that you have to be really careful about because we want to have conversational language, use simple terms that make sense. So when you have a technical product like process mining that's got some really complex algorithms in the background, it'd be easy to write this very technical error message that also no one would understand. But you have to be careful about not going too far in the other direction and just simply saying it failed, right? You need to give people some indication of where to go next. Even saying things like, it failed, talk to your system admin, doesn't really help anybody because that system admin also has no indication of what to do. So one of the things that we want to do when we're looking at error messages is make sure we leave that kernel of where to start to solve your problem. The reality is your customers, your users don't want to raise a case with ServiceNow to solve their problem. To add time to their process, they really want to be self-sufficient. So we want to help them with that. So what we did was we actually got somebody from our content design team, and they worked through with our engineers for a complete rewrite of all of our error messages. And that allowed us to strike that balance between the really technical stuff that the engineers could explain in language engineers understand, and putting it in a language that a layperson could understand and give them direction for how to fix it. It's a very, very lengthy process. Obviously, products can go wrong in many ways. So that effort was a huge effort, but it's paying off and customers being able to get their jobs up and running more quickly, more efficiently, and importantly, by themselves.
Well, and you mentioned that the layperson, because that's kind of a big thing at ServiceNow, that it's not just I'm an IT professional, is I am now somebody using ServiceNow.
Yep.
I am now somebody who is pivoted in my career. I'm now somebody who was, hey, you're now working on this and it's ServiceNow and you need to figure out the terminology. So it's not just, I understand all this with my computer science background. It's like, I got 3 seconds to solve somebody's problem.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to remember, if I'm working in HR or if I'm working in customer service or finance, that's going to be a completely different language than the technical person. So I need this to make sense no matter who you are and what function you're in. I can't just have something written for the technical person with an engineering background. It's got to work for the accountant as much as it's got to work for the engineer.
What were some surprises, though, that you found along the way? How did, you mentioned that to me, just when you said that some of your customers will spend 20 hours with you figuring it out. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, and that to me was probably the biggest surprise was the persistence and even the patience that customers showed to endure these problems. And it spoke to two things. Number one was the trust that ServiceNow really was going to help them run their business better, right? This was something where they believed the product could do what it said it could do if they could just get past these hurdles. And I think that that's an important thing to never take your eye off of. Trust, our CEO likes to say, trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. And we want to make sure that we keep that in mind and we look after our users. But the second thing was that it's not like buying a product for yourself at home. Jesse talked about Netflix. I can turn it on, I can turn it off. I'm given the tools at work. I am told this is what you're going to work with, which means that if your product doesn't work, people are going to have a really bad day. And that's the opposite of what we want at ServiceNow. Like, our goal is genuinely to make your workday better, to help your work easier for you. Like, don't do the hard stuff. Let us do the hard stuff. So for us, it's really important when we see people having to be patient, having to be persistent. We understand what's causing that, take it away so that we're not a friction point in your day.
Well, Tricia, thank you so much. That explains so much more about why the product is just evolving in the best way possible. It's really exciting. So, Jesse, you brought Tricia and Molly onto the show because you were so impressed with what they were doing and have a good understanding. Wrap up what Tricia was saying for those of us who are still kind of going like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I love hearing these stories because, like we said in the very beginning, UX research is all about talking to end users, the people in the product day in and day out. And what strikes me about those case studies is you're just like, the things that come up are so basic sometimes. Like, it wasn't working. And when it didn't work, the messages it gave me didn't make any sense. And those are not things that are going to come up in a meeting with a decision maker or a buyer, right? You're talking about the bling. You're talking about all the cool features it has. They want to feel like they're getting the value for their money. But
right. That's 6 months in somewhere in an office in Des Moines that
right.
No one knows is there. And like, we're stuck.
Exactly. Right. Because it's really trying to answer the question, did it deliver on all the stuff that our sales and marketing told you it would do? And when it doesn't, we need to know that. And that's kind of our job as researchers is to tell you, did it deliver and how, if not, what happened. And so that's what I guess that's the one thing I'd say in reaction to that is I love those stories because it really just brings me back to one, how crucial this, user research is. And it's like the connecting point for that end user experience. And also just, again, so how basic some of these findings are and, important for us to fix. So,
yeah. And that's going to be interesting when we talk to Molly, because she's talking about, one of our flagship projects with Now Assist and voice, and of course, accessibility, which ServiceNow is really leading the charge on. So we're going to switch over and talk to Molly Bowman, who is going to really walk us through the excitement of voice for Now Assist, which is a really cool thing for anybody that hasn't used it. It's awesome because you get to talk to it and it's amazing. And the idea of accessibility, which of course ServiceNow is really leading the way on. Molly, a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm a UX researcher, a platform UX researcher, meaning that I'm focused not necessarily just on one product, but the user experience across the platform, across all products, specifically focused on accessibility and globalization. And the Voice for Now Assist project, it was initiated by a product manager who had an idea about a way to better support users with accessibility needs using voice. And this was, I think, initiated about 3 or 4 years ago. So before Now Assist launched, we were already thinking about how to incorporate voice into the platform. And now it is just launched, the initial MVP for voice. So it's available via Now Assist. You can speak to it and use your voice to prompt it, which is really exciting to see it coming to life after all this time.
Because that's one of those things that I think all of us think is just, we see it in movies and it's science fiction, and now it's science fact that it's happening and we get to tell it what to do. But that's got to be a bit of a challenge, because you've got all sorts of ways of dealing with voice. It's not just my voice in a room, in a closet with a microphone and headphones speaking, I would like you to do this now. It's not that simple. How does the research team deal with that?
Yeah, it's a very complex ask, and because it was initiated with the intent to meet accessibility needs, we knew right off the bat we were gonna have a wide range of types of users engaging with it. So we conducted discovery research, with users with accessibility needs to try to understand, how are they already using voice tools and what's working and not working for them so that we could incorporate those components into Voice for Now Assist to make sure that we could hit the ground running with a good understanding of those user needs already in mind in that initial offering. But yes, quite a range of needs. When we're talking about accessibility needs, we're talking about not just what we would call permanent accessibility needs, which is maybe more of the stereotypical understanding of accessibility, meaning having visual, cognitive, motor types of accessibility needs. We're also talking about people who may have a temporary accessibility need. So maybe they broke their arm and they can't type as easily, and it's easier to use their voice to engage with a platform. There are also situational accessibility needs where somebody maybe doesn't have access to their hands because they have gloves on. Maybe they're in a bunny suit in a manufacturing center, and they need to use voice to engage with the ServiceNow platform to make sure that they're updating their process as effectively as they're working. So the ways that somebody might need to use voice, there's a really vast array, and it can cover um, just about anybody might have that need at any point in their lives, and we want to be ready to make sure that there are multimodal ways to interact with the ServiceNow platform for all of those users.
It's not a toy. It's an actual feature and useful function. Then so it's got to be working at a high volume, or volume is the wrong term to throw in there, but a high quality level. Um, what were some of the other findings that you came across when you were doing the research on this?
Yeah, that was certainly quality is something that our users talk about all the time. I think if you've ever used any voice input tool at all, from something on your phone to something on your computer, you know that it doesn't always understand you accurately. It doesn't always hear you accurately. If you're dictating something, it might use a lot of autocorrect that changes it to something different than what you thought it would. When we're talking about trying to help our customers and our end users work efficiently, those hiccups are productivity lost. And we really want to make sure that we're supporting productivity all the way down the line for those users who are in any situation where they might need to use voice. So one of the things we found right off the bat was that investing in high quality voice models was absolutely worth it, because reducing those errors and the time that it takes to then correct the errors, which can sometimes be more time than it would have taken to just use a different method of input. Um, all of that, we want to minimize that as much as possible, both for our customers and those end users. And so we really turned towards, as a result, when we were building the product, we were making sure that the level of understanding of the voice model was as high as possible so that we could really reduce those issues.
Like, there's got to be sound issues and accents and regionality and turns of simple turns of phrases. Were you involved with anybody from the linguistic side, or in the different the thinking side of language as opposed to the typing side of language?
We did actually. This was a collaboration in many ways, and as part of the discovery research, we have linguists on our team. They're actually under the AI umbrella, and there was a lot of overlap and collaboration to make sure that we were understanding the types of needs that we would want to be meeting from a language perspective. Even if you are an American speaking American English, you may have a Southern accent. And I think I spoke to a woman with a Southern accent who said that sometimes voice models don't understand her at all. And so these kinds of things come up in subtle ways that you may not expect. We're not just looking to support really extreme differences. There's an entire range of differences, and the wider the range of the capacity of the voice model, the more people we can support, essentially. So accents, like you said, different ways of phrasing things. So language models that have a lot of flexibility in their natural language understanding. Models that can screen out external noise, like background noise, things that are happening that might affect the capacity for the correct language to be understood. So all sorts of different confounding factors. And make it, and there's also a range of voice models available, and that can determine the cost of building something. This was a place where we knew that we wanted to get this right, and it was really critical to the success of the product overall.
Well, that sounds like you're almost building, a personality. How does that play into this? How with audio, it's everybody's got a different voice and a different tone they like. What was some of the research into that?
Right. Well, I do think that what we do know, especially from an accessibility side, but I think again, this is something that most folks could relate to. You can understand your own accent better than somebody else's accent, even if they're speaking the same language. And so we heard that from users as well, that the types of ways, if we were going to have a voice model that spoke back, the types of ways that that voice model would create language and then create voice, it was really important that it was a similar accent for understandability overall. Um, and so that's not something that's currently enabled in the Voice for Now Assist, but that is something that we heard from our users because they are using and they're finding ways to incorporate voice into their workflows in general, especially users, for instance, with cognitive accessibility needs. Having a voice tool that can speak to them or that they can speak to can really help with reading complex things, with summarizing things, and the understandability in their productivity overall. So just learning, and just a reminder that this initial study was really just to understand how are users using voice tools already, and they are already using voice tools in these ways and telling us the accent of the speaker matters. It needs to understand me. I don't want to have to correct my input constantly, and I need to understand my own accent as well.
Well, that's such a smart thing to do that our customers are already using other tools, as I'm sure everybody else's customers is like, hey, I got this product, but I've got this aftermarket thing. I've got this other piece thing. And I personally like this thing. I'm going to tell you how I make it better. And then for you in the research side, it's gonna be, oh, great. You've done a lot of great stuff for us. What were some surprises that came out in this aspect of it?
Yeah, well, I think you have a really good point there, and that's one thing that I just want to maybe highlight. The reason that we did this kind of discovery research, where we looked at what users were already using before finalizing the build and launching our own product, is because it's so much more effective to understand what choices are users already making. They're already making value judgments about certain products, trying to understand what's worth it, what's worth the investment, what's offering enough productivity ROI. And that tells us so much more about what users will then use in the future than to just ask a user, hey, what do you think you'll use in the future? Um, a lot of users might have ideas about what they would want, but often we say things and don't necessarily, our behavior doesn't always match what we promise. And so by looking at this existing behavior of those users, we really got a good sense of what choices are they already making. And the surprise to me was that they are already making these choices constantly. It's especially for users with cognitive accessibility needs, visual accessibility needs, motor accessibility needs. They are already juggling several assistive technologies, including voice, to try to improve their productivity. With enterprise platforms in general, certainly with the ServiceNow platform. There are limitations for many of those users, especially if they work for an organization that has a lot of real security issues around data. So the types of tools that they can use externally are really limited. It's a really big process to get them approved, to make sure that they're secure enough. That's a giant headache for users who are already having these productivity limitations based on the fact that they need to use voice to interact in general. And so by launching something internally within the ServiceNow platform, we're hoping that we can really reduce that level of frustration for our users overall, that they can work within the platform entirely without worrying about needing to get their particular product approved so that they can use voice input with the platform.
Wow, so you guys are really solving all of the actual problems
Trying
to
to.
make it work.
Yes, exactly.
Molly, amazing. So thank you so much for explaining that to us, and I'm excited to hear more in the future about this.
Absolutely. Lots more coming.
All right, Jessie, we're going to come back to you. That's a lot of really strong research. I mean, when Molly was talking, I kind of wanted to go, if you asked me, like, how can I use this product on a beach under a coconut tree? And I know that's not something that's going to happen, but I just want to put that out there in the universe because I think we all have to figure that out at some point. But this is fascinating. I mean, this has got to be probably the most exciting part of your job.
Oh yeah. I love these stories. I mean, I like especially the comment you made, Molly, about when we're doing research and we're asking people, we're not asking them how do you think you're going to use this in the future? We're really looking at how are they using it now, and that's really the way to build it. It reminded me of this story, this example that my research leader at LinkedIn when I worked there, Julian Orvisis, amazing leader, UX researcher, and in person. She said, if you're doing research on like pizza and how to improve the pizza experience, if you were to go up to people and say, hey, do you want more cheese in your pizza? Most people would say, yeah, sure. More cheese. That sounds great. But if you actually sit down and say, tell me what a great slice of pizza is for you. Tell me the best slice of pizza you've had recently and tell me why. Then you would understand what goes into a great slice of pizza, and most of the time it's not going to be more cheese. And so it's such a unique part of like the UX research function. We're kind of like going through these indirect ways of understanding what people's experience is, and then using those insights to make products like Now Assist and process mining better for everyone.
Well, I'm going to totally steal your metaphor because I as listening to both Tricia and Molly, when you say do you want more cheese, it immediately made me start thinking like a researcher, like 7 cups of cheese is what somebody's going to ask for. And that's not right. But do we give it to them? And somebody's going to go, well, they asked for 7 cups of cheese, give them 7 cups of cheese. And everyone's like going, no, we can't do that. But that's what they want. And you guys are probably going, stop.
Right. Because really what that's asking is it's asking the customer, the user, to be the solution maker. And that's not actually their job. I mean, they might give us good solutions and that's great, but their job is to tell us what their experience is. What they are the expert in is their experience, their day-to-day with our product, how they use our products in their place of work. We are the ones who are supposed to come up with the amazing solutions, right? That's our forte. And so it really kind of just puts in perspective, like, what are our respective roles in this process? Because otherwise then you get the customer that's like, I want 7 cups of cheese on my pizza. But what you need to know is why. Okay, why are you telling me that? What problem do you think that is going to solve? And that is the unique kind of skill and art of the UX researcher is to get to that why and to get to what's really going on behind all those requests.
So the most important part of really what this podcast is all about is how do customers and users figure this out and talk to you guys? How and where can they come find you and go, I got some great ideas?
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you asked, Bobby, because we do have our product lab, which is our kind of exclusive research panel. I say exclusive, but actually anybody can join. We like to say it's exclusive because it sounds cool. But anybody can join if you're a ServiceNow customer. We have a link to the sign-up form in the show notes. So if you want to participate in studies like you heard from Molly and Tricia, to let your voice be heard, tell us about your ServiceNow experience, and help shape the future of the ServiceNow products you use every day, please click that link and sign up. Also, if you want to hear a little bit more about either of these case studies, Amy Loki wrote a blog. Then we'll also have a link to that in the show notes that talks about these 2 case studies. So if you want to hear a little bit more information about them, please do that. But yes, find us in Product Lab. We would love for you to join.
So there you go, everybody. All you need to know about research and where to be a part of it to really make your end of ServiceNow that much better. So joining us today was Jessie Livingston, Tricia Wilson, and Molly Bowman. I'm your host, Bobby Brill. Check out the show notes for links to all the things we keyed on and talked about. And thanks for listening.